I'm going to hey guys, we're trying this again. We had a little technical problem. And with that, I'm going to step off and turn it over to Abby and Lori.
Hello, welcome back to Tech Tuesday. If you were here with us just a little while ago, I have on Lori Olaf, and Lori is a tech analyst. We were chatting it up. We were having a great discussion, and we were having some technical difficulties. Yes, that does happen with me. It happens with Lori. It happened with StreamYard. It happens with Steve. It definitely happens. It's an unavoidable aspect of living in today's world. Nonetheless, we were having an excellent discussion about technology, about some amazing things to look forward to in technology with older adults. And that's kind of where we were at. So Lori, welcome back to Tech Tuesday. I'm going to bypass the intro and all that other stuff, and let's just hop into the future, okay? And let's talk about the future. Where do you see technology benefiting older adults in the future?
There are many ways that technology is beginning to and will continue to benefit older adults in the future.
Okay.
Number one thing is that increasingly likely that older adults will be connected through high-speed internet connections, enabling them to access Zoom, FaceTime, and connect to their children in the kind of pictures that you and I are looking at right now of ourselves. That is highly likely to happen in the near term for most older adults, whether it's through government assistance programs or the pressure from family members like grandchildren. It's definitely going to happen. So there you go. High-speed internet access is in the cards.
Good. Because I want to say I've seen a huge amount of growth in the past 2 years for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But I've also seen just a lot of delay in many communities where people are just, maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, where there are some communities that were just like, I don't know. Let's just see where this goes. Do we really need to invest in it? And they're getting a lot of push from the adult children, a lot of push from most of the residents. And then there's also a lot of push back from some of the staff, as well as the infrastructure just isn't developed, right?
It's not there yet. And that has to do with the fact that investments in high-speed internet were deferred for a very long time. And then COVID happened. And sort of two things became really obvious during COVID. One is, wow, bummer, we didn't invest in high-speed internet.
Right.
And two, our businesses have suffered because of COVID, and we may not have the budget to invest in high-speed internet right now. And so you've got two forces, and I would say those forces they're in conflict with each other. The investment is going to have to happen. I did some interviewing for a research report recently in which I asked somebody who's knowledgeable about some of the biggest senior living communities in the US, and I said, would it be a fair statement to say that 50% of their communities have high-speed internet? And he said, no, not yet. And I said, well, okay, so this is a problem. Families are going to push. And if you're in a competitive region where there are a number of competing senior living companies trying to attract new clients, those companies are going to have to do something. So that's what I would say about that. And then the other issue that is sort of not all that appealing an issue, but someone has to provide tech support. So when you start putting technology into senior living communities, and then you realize your only tech support is the activities person, who helps everybody with their smartphones, starts up the broadcasts or the programs that are going to be interacted with, manages all the software that's in the environment, then you say, well, wait a second, we've got a problem here.
Yeah.
And the bigger senior living communities have started to recognize this idea, which I think is definitely going to take off in the future, called tech concierge.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see a tech concierge out there. Some communities are already looking at some kind of way to provide technical expertise that the activities person doesn't have and the aides don't have either. And so I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I want to backtrack just a minute and talk about the Wi-Fi in some of the communities. So I know that like we talked about, the infrastructure is just not there in some of them. And what I experienced was that some of the buildings had Wi-Fi, some of the
Right.
rehab centers did not. There were patients in some of the rehab centers that could not log on to watch their church services, for instance, and just didn't have the infrastructure in place.
Right.
And no one is really like, taking up the slack and making that happen. And I just thought, oh my gosh, how awful is that? And then the other part to this too is that, well, from what I'm hearing, it's like new residents are moving in with upwards to 10 devices per person, right? And all of them are requesting Wi-Fi connection. And then there's just a whole slew of technical issues that need to be addressed every single day. And like you said, so often it's the activity director who's walking down the hall, who's setting up the projector, who's setting up the next activity, who gets caught in the hallway, right? Can you help me with my password? Can you help me with my Apple ID? That type of thing. And so, yeah, the communities that are thriving are the ones that are putting in an IT person, are the ones that are, putting in a tech concierge person in place to handle the growing needs.
Absolutely. That is absolutely the case.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to happen. And I think the ones that don't do it, or the more financially challenged that can't do it, are going to lose ground. We're at an inflection point. And it's like everything else. When technology is invested in, companies move forward. And when they skip an investment and decide to defer it to a future point, then that's an issue. You have a comment here that's been displayed about owner operators are not putting in. Yes, that the buying and selling of properties is definitely a deterrent to getting new technology into communities. And financial health of the organization is an issue. But this has happened in multiple industries over the years, where you can't afford to invest and you can't afford not to invest. And so that dilemma has to be overcome in this industry for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk more about the future. Let's talk beyond Wi-Fi. What are some technologies in various categories that you see taking over, and not taking over, but really benefiting seniors?
Yeah. Well, aside from Wi-Fi, I think the smartphone is pervasive at this point. I don't think people are going to be moving too many more years in with a clamshell feature phone. I think that's not going to happen. So,
well, I see plenty of people using a flip phone.
there are plenty of people using them, but it's going to be hard to find replacements for them in the store pretty soon. Yeah. And then the pressure from the family is going to really push people to the next stage. And then there's the smart speaker idea, that you'd have something that you could talk to that would actually play music for you, or read you a book, or enable you to, in fact, sign up for a trip that's going to happen in the afternoon. I think hearables are moving forward in terms of providing people with hearing assistance that is not the full price of a hearing aid. They're called hearables. I think one of the things that has given them a boost is the Apple AirPods that are dangling from people's ears, which are taking the stigma away from hearing aids. And so I think more people who have hearing limitations, of which many people in senior living do, are going to be pushed by family members to address it. And they better do it sooner rather than later, because we know that if hearing is not corrected, it's a predictor of dementia.
Yes.
So that's a problem.
And you don't get your hearing once the nerves fray, right? You don't get that back. So even with the best hearing aids in place, for sure. Yeah, I've done a lot of research in that regard as well, and have talked to many audiologists, as well as featured various bone conduction headphones that go around, so that you don't have to actually put something inside of your ears if you need to. But you just mentioned these Apple AirPods that they dangle. I haven't seen this before. This is cool.
Well, Apple AirPods are for people who are trying to listen to music as they walk around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
The key thing they did was they took away the stigma of having something hanging out of your ear. And if you know about the hearing aid, the $6,000 pair of hearing aids, that is intended to be so small that no one can see it. That's the stigma that's in the process of changing. And that has created this entire category called hearables.
Yeah.
And multiple companies are in it now, and the price point is far lower. Also, hearing aids can be bought now over the counter. They can be bought online. So that market is completely changing, and I would say in a few years will be more obviously impacting the lives of older adults. The other tech, there's assistive technology for low vision and blind people.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, that's another reason to get a smartphone, is because a lot of the assistive technology is directly on the device.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't even look for those features on a smartphone or a tablet. But once you start looking for those features, you start to realize what an incredible capability is out there. And in fact, there's software out there that allows you to wave your device over goods in your kitchen, in the cabinet, and it will read back to you what the labels all say. That's just a small example of what you can do with applications on a smartphone.
Absolutely. You can do that with a smart speaker too. You can wave a spice bottle in front of it and say, what spice am I holding right now? What color paint am I holding right now? So there are.
It's a smart speaker with a screen.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And with so many of these technologies, what I recommend my students do is, really develop a vocabulary, develop a familiarity, develop a relationship with it, because so much of it is just really getting comfortable with it now that at this point right now that you can see, you can use, you can operate the device right now, so that later on, when you have less dexterity, your vision starts to fail you, you still have the memory in place of how you operated it and how it worked.
Right.
Yeah.
All true.
Yeah. So tell us, so many people come to you to find out what's happening, what's new, what they should be looking towards. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, I read.
Yeah.
That's really what I do. Basically, when I'm not actually writing a blog post or writing something for a client or speaking on something like this or giving a webinar or something like that, the rest of the time, I have alerts that come into my email box every day, sometimes 5 times a day, telling me based on certain categories of topic, like for example, senior living. I get alerts that say what's going on in senior living, or voice technology, or whatever it happens to be, and I scan through them, and if something is worth noting, I save it and I use it in my future research and writing. So that's one way. The other way is I interact with a lot of people all the time in my business and in my travels. Sometimes my travels are virtual now, but in my business and in my travels, I interact with a lot of people, and a lot of people want to tell me, we've just invented a great product for XYZ, or we're a big company, but we've decided to enter the market for older adults.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're an investor and we're thinking of investing in the category of technology for older adults, but we want to do a little research and we want you to look at this one company that we're contemplating investing in, and that kind of thing. So that's the day in the life of an industry analyst.
I wanted to touch on something else that we talked about a while ago, which is about monitoring, right? About the monitoring and the sensors. And so can you talk to us about that, where that's all heading?
Well, some years ago, a lot of monitoring technology companies emerged, and they sort of came and then they went. And part of the reason they went is because the time wasn't right. The price wasn't right. The infrastructure for collecting the data wasn't right. The people who might benefit from sensor technologies weren't ready. And so they all went away. And then now another wave of companies are coming through now who have a wide variety of types of sensors. We have camera-based sensors. We have motion sensors. We have radar sensors. We have all kinds of sensor-related technologies, some of which, in fact, can record a video, add it to a database, examine the video with multiple other videos, and detect if there's a change in behavior of the person. This is particularly useful in dementia care when the people can't tell you why they fell.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a category that is emerging, and I would say there's more to do in sensors, because what's happened with the sensor market is, so lots of companies have sensor technology, but what is it telling you? And what is it being used to in terms of prediction of changes in your behavior that matter over time? And will your doctor ever look at the results of any of that? And is there someone in the senior living industry who's willing to look at some of that? I mean, that's the problem, is you have this often has happened with technology. The technology changes, it's very innovative, but the recipients, the business intermediaries that need to respond to it aren't quite ready. And so we're sort of there now with predictive analytics and sensors, but it's coming back because, as you know, one of the big issues in senior living, home care, home health care, all of these industries right now is labor.
Yes.
There are short people to do the work. And so to the degree that sensor technologies can make a difference in mitigating chasing up and down long hallways to see what's going on with Mrs. Smith and things like that, sensors are going to be extremely useful in the future.
Yeah, let's talk about that in a more practical sense. So in regards to using the sensors for being able to see what's happening, not seeing, but sensing what's happening inside someone's apartment, for instance, if we're concerned that a resident has not gotten up yet, or has not had breakfast, or hasn't responded to any check-ins, for instance. So let's talk about that, because I know that there are a lot of sensors that also detect motion, for instance, just patterns in motion. So how would that help with staff shortages and monitoring that?
Well, if you think about the fact that so much of time in senior living communities is spent going up and down hallways to check on people, and if the technology is in the apartment that can actually do the checking and alert someone to the fact that there isn't a problem, it's more important actually with sensor technology to know where there isn't a problem, because that enables you to focus on where there is a problem. And like a lot of industries, senior living and home care are both great examples. They've not been really focused on efficiency of utilization of staff in recent years. They have lots of other motivations and reasons to invest, but that hasn't been one. I think that's going to change. When you have a crisis like we have now, a shortage of labor, sensor technology can make a really big difference with the right data extracted from the sensors, with the right permissions from the residents, to enable the deployment of the sensors, and with the right recipients of the data able to deal with whatever the sensors have observed.
We have a comment here about robots in senior living, for instance, ones that are going to deliver food, ones that will deliver packages, right? So what have you found is on the horizon here that would benefit senior living communities?
Well, people have tried several times now to deploy robots. I think the idea of delivering food down a long hallway is a winning idea. And that, not just food, but today's mail or whatever it happens to be. I mean, a person could retrieve the material and send a robot down a long hallway to actually deliver it to a room. That would be great. And in the hotel industry, that's already being experimented with. So that's really useful. The other use of robots, I think, is more questionable at this time. The idea of robots for social engagement of older people, that's been tried too. And often the press releases you get out of senior living communities, every time they decide to put out a press release, it's often about, we just, did a trial with a robot. It's a wonderful experience. Everybody loves talking to the robot. Fantastic, fantastic. Take those with a grain of salt, because you need to find a situation where that kind of response happened. And also there was deployment. And the reason there isn't always deployment of robots in senior living communities is the price point hasn't come down enough to make them as viable as inexpensive motion sensors, for example.
Yeah. I was recently on a campus, on the campus of the University of Arizona with my daughter, and we saw one of these little delivery robots that was delivering food. And my daughter, who's only 15, she said, "Oh, that is just too weird. I could never order that up." So, but I mean, it was weird to see it, but I could definitely envision that being the norm in several years.
Oh, yes. And by the way, if she's only 15, Ask her again if she was 19 or 20, and she's been waiting for the food guy to deliver the food, and hasn't shown up. So I would say times
Right.
change.
Yeah, times change. That's true. So tell me, is there any technology out there right now that you wish existed but doesn't?
Yes, I would say it's probably higher quality integration technology that can combine the information from multiple devices in a home into a single unified message. That does not exist yet. There's talk about something called the Matter standard that will enable people to implement technologies in the home. They're not regularly compatible with each other, but you'll be able to control them with one application. If that makes it into consumer technology, it won't be all that long before it makes it into senior living technology. But right now, I can even look around my own house and say there are at least 5 incompatible technologies in my home, maybe more. And integrating them is a nightmare. Luckily, I have a very tech-savvy husband, but everybody doesn't have that. So it's difficult, and people want the integration of these devices. They want to be able to use one voice command to turn them all on or off or set alarms or whatever, and that doesn't exist.
Right, that one panel where you can just go there and it will integrate everything in one place for sure. Right.
Hasn't happened yet. Well, it will.
And so tell me also, as we kind of wrap up here today, what are some things that you're really passionate about?
Well, one of the white papers I'm writing now is about the use of music with people who have dementia.
Oh, nice.
And so I've been looking into that a little bit for that. And I play piano in senior living communities with another woman. We play piano 4 hands, and I've been in many senior living communities. I would say music and dementia is a big opportunity, and relatively few tech companies are looking at it. Lots of senior living communities are looking at it. Of course, this is back to the activities manager and what to do with the dementia unit on Sunday afternoon. There's nothing scheduled, but it's a big opportunity. For one thing, it has a lot of already measured positive outcomes on people's mental health and well-being. So I'm passionate about music. I was trained in music, and I'm a believer in its effect on older people. And I can see it in my tour of senior living communities where I live with my piano partner. We can see it in their faces, and a lot of times they're singing and they're clapping and so forth.
Yeah. It's a non-medical intervention, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lori, thank you so much for your patience and your time today, and just for the second chance we had to do this broadcast. And I wish you all the best, and thank you for coming on to Tech Tuesday. And we'd love to have you again. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, and for all of you out there, we look forward to seeing you here next week when we have on our special guest from Independent. Thank you.